Hey, what's up guys? JB here. Welcome back to my Future Look series, and it's definitely been a minute since we've had a new unit to look at here on the Japanese side. We actually had a little bit of a break there where they actually got Ibarra, who we've actually had here on Global here for some time. But actually several weeks ago, a new Warriors of the Crystal story did begin over on the Japanese side. And the first unit that we're going to be able to summon from that new story is Perene here. Of course, the name is always subject to change, when they do translate it and it comes to global, but, we're just going to go with Perene here for now. Now, like the past Warriors of the Crystal, she is going to be a new 100 cost unit, and she is going to be of the water element as well. And that is actually going to make her the second Warrior of the Crystal from that element. The artwork here is just stunning as always. I really love the look of this character with the vibrant colors and aesthetic. Now, as you can see from the fist weapons that she's wielding here, she is going to be a new monk character. So are we actually going to be destined for a new strike meta with this unit? Well, let's actually dive into the kit now and let's see what she's all about. So kicking it off here, Perene is a 100 cost water element. As we mentioned, she's going to have a base 3-1 movement and she can wear hats and cloth. Now, looking at the TMR here, I am actually super disappointed that they've given this TMR only a single cast. If anyone over at Gumi is listening, please stop doing this. 2 casts should really just be baseline at this point so that, within autoplay for Guild Wars, we're able to build team movement around it, especially when we're looking at turning on and off certain abilities to leverage TMRs. I really don't see any valid reason at this point to just limit these TMRs to only a single cast. It's not like this effect is so insane or game-breaking that it really needs to be toned down in that regard. And, even if it were, we do have dispel abilities that would be able to take care of it anyway. Anyway, sorry for the rant there, guys, but, at the end of the day, the effect on this TMR is basically just a worse version of the buff that Persona 5's Violet can give the party. And the effect is decent enough, I can definitely see some potential uses for this. I think it would be especially strong for manual play when you can actually leverage other CT buffs and mechanics along with this. But really, it's just hard for me to get past the 1 cast on the TMR, especially when we're talking the latest and greatest, so-called premium 100 cost unit here. All right, guys, moving on to the stats here, and there's definitely a lot to like. Now, jumping out immediately here are going to be the big HP numbers for Perene. She's firmly going to be in that bruiser class of units. She's well above average in both base and innate values for hit points, and she's actually going to be north of that 4,600 mark, which, there's only actually a small handful of units that are above that in War of the Visions, and, actually most of them are tanks. Now, similarly, her base attack value coming in at 413 is very strong as well. It's actually only about 20 off the top mark currently, which is Flagbearer Glaciella, and it does give her a top 15 value in the game. Now, when we look over at the innate attack value, it does actually drop down a bit. She doesn't actually get as many bonuses like from her mastery or from her EX board that sort of bring her up there, but I think that base attack value alone is enough that she's going to be able to get to a very competitive level. As we look across the remaining stats here though, there's actually no major weaknesses kind of jumping out. She's pretty much meeting the UR average or exceeding it in pretty much every statistical category here. And notably, she is above average in both her dex and agility values. In terms of accuracy, it is just coming in at an average level. She doesn't really have a ton for accuracy or luck up bonuses. She does have a passive though that she is able to equip, and if she does use that, it would bring her up an above average level. That one is coming from her pugilist passive. It's really not one of my favorite passives in the game. I don't normally recommend that, but it is there if you happen to need it. So I think, considering those things, accuracy could be a potential, loophole to exploit on this unit. We'll have to sort of look at how the rest of the kit here is fleshing out and sort of bringing that up for her. Now, for the last 3 stats here, Perene does come in with the operative Subjobs, so we are actually looking at a passable, starting evade score for her. She is actually just squeaking above average in that domain, and she can actually be built, fairly effectively in that area, if you really focus on it. Water actually does have 2 35% luck cards, so, that actually does help her out quite a bit as well in that area. I don't actually think it's her strongest build, but, considering she is a bruiser, there actually could be something there where you could sort sort of use that evade to sort of augment her survivability rather than sort of relying on it solely. Now, in terms of her crit value, you know, she is actually squeaking just above the UR average. She has that nice dex that we talked about, so it actually does have the nice foundation here for a crit unit, and she will actually be able to crit fairly reliable, you know, if you are to put some focus on that. Now, in terms of crit evasion, you know, she's coming in, you know, just around that average, you know, right around that 50 mark. You know, most units in the game are kind of right in this area. It is highly dependent on the luck value of the character. So, you know, most units, they're going to be sort of plus or minus 10, you know, on this particular mark. Now, Perene's mastery, let's take a quick look at that. She's coming in with that standard 10% HP, 15 water attack. She is picking up some resistances here, you know, to 10% slash and 10% pierce resistance. And we are looking at an innate 20% chance to block counters. So it's a nice enough mastery, you know, nothing crazy here. Now, defensively, Perene is coming in right out of the box with 12 defense, which is very nice, but she has no spirit, so definitely is going to be one of the concerns I have for her. For the defensive resistances here, we are looking at that 30% to slash and 20% to pierce. Very, very nice base resistances there, and that is factoring in that mastery that we just talked about. Now, aside from those two, we are looking at very average, you know, very neutral resistances here, either plus or minus 5 to everything else. But we are looking at 0% to magic. Not a huge liability, but, you know, factoring in that we don't have any spirit either, I'd say that, you know, that is the area that I'm most concerned about, you know, when it comes to this unit and her defenses. So, you know, just sort of factoring in the stats alone here, you know, we are definitely looking at a physical bruiser archetype starting to develop. And statistically, I'm actually seeing quite a few resemblances here to Esther. Now, moving into Perene's support abilities and counters, and there are just so many options here. You know, I really can't think of a unit in recent memory that has had this many good passives to choose from. So, you know, that is definitely a strength in of itself. Option 1 here, though, by far is definitely the best one that she has in her kit, and actually may very well be one of the best passives that I've seen in the game to date. It's coming in with an incredible 4 different effects, all of which are very, very good. She's going to be getting an attack up bonus here, area resist, acquired AP, and defense pen, you know, all in one. I'd say this passive alone is, you know, better than the complete ensemble of, you know, many launch units out there. And, you know, it's probably the equivalent of 2 different passives combined on, you know, many more recent units. So very, very solid passive here. So of course, you know, this is one that you're always going to want to have turned on. Now, adding to that passive, you know, I'm going to go with my first build path here. It's going to be the all-purpose build. I'm going to add option 3 there to the first one. That's going to give her an increase in both agility and HP, which as always, you know, both universally useful effects. Now, for more of a damage-centric build, you might consider passive number 6 here from Pugilist, and that's going to net her even more attack power along with the HP bonus. Or you could combine it with option 2. That's going to be more of a mobile build. It's going to give you an additional movement there, get her up to move 4. I'd say it's definitely more of an interesting choice for manual play. You know, we always like to have that mobility there, but, you know, on certain maps, you know, your team might be starting, you know, further apart. So having that option for 4 move can sort of help you set up, you know, additional turn buffing sequences. So, you know, I like it for that in autoplay as well. To be honest though, you know, depending on the situation, there really are going to be uses for pretty much everything that you see here in the list. I think there are going to be a lot of nice builds that you can come up with, you know, leveraging these different options. Even some that I didn't even mention here, like, you know, combining both acquired AP passives, for example. Now, in terms of counter abilities for Perene, there are actually a couple that I like for her, and both of them are going to be of the preemptive variety, and they're both coming in with that enhanced 30% chance to proc. The first one that she gets here is from her new main job. It's going to be strike-based damage, and it has a range of up to 3 with a range height of 1. Very nice effect here, though. It's actually going to increase your CT by 15, you know, when it procs off, you know, in addition to that preemptive damage. Now, option 2 is very much the same, you know, in terms of its range. However, it's actually a little bit more flexible in that it has a range height of 2 on it. Now, in order to get that range height flexibility, you know, you do give up that CT bonus that we talked about in the first ability. So I'm not sure that it's going to be worth it, you know, for general use, but, you know, definitely nice from a flexibility standpoint. Either way, you know, both of these are very nice options to have. You know, I always like to have those preemptive counters. They can definitely save your hide, you know, in certain situations when they go off and potentially kill the unit that's trying to attack you, you know, before they're able to deliver any damage onto you. So Either way, both of these are very nice options to have, and the one from her main job in particular, having that range of 3, that is much better than we've seen on monk jobs in the past. So either way, both of these are very nice options to have for Perene. Definitely leagues better than the counter abilities we've seen on previous strike-based jobs such as Pugilist or Monk. Both jobs which have been very limited in their range, particularly on their counters. Usually coming in at only 1 range. Alright, let's move into the main kit here next, and let's start with her buffs. Now, her self-only buff is providing a 40% AP consumption decrease, and it's also going to bestow the ability on her to dispel the protect status for the next 3 turns. This is always a very useful dispel to have, and as more and more tanks and bruisers are getting access to that status, this buff is also going to be providing Perene a large 80% attack buff while her HP remains above a 70% threshold. So to really maximize the power of this buff, you're really going to want to make sure that Perene stays in a position that she's above 70% HP. Whether you do that by burgeoning up her defenses or, maybe having a support unit behind her to sort of keep her topped off. Very strong self buff here, but I think I would actually prefer an unconditional attack bonus, maybe at a lesser value of 30 to 40% like we've seen on other buffs in the game. As this attack buff, has a high chance to really be eliminated entirely if she sort of has taken damage as she's advancing on the enemy. I think that the other effects on it here, though, more than make up for it. The 40% decreased AP consumption in particular is very, very strong. AP actually shouldn't be a huge worry for this unit so long as she has this buff enabled. Now moving into her party buff, she's going to be picking up a 15 area resist buff here for the allies, while at the same time she's going to be providing herself 25% slash and pierce resist. This one is also going to bestow her an auto heal back ability that will trigger when she hits a 50% HP threshold. So I'd say this one actually does work pretty well with the first buff that we were just talking about. If she did take, big damage as she was advancing, this would actually heal her back up and put her above that 70%. Now we are seeing more and more units coming into the game that have these heal back abilities, and they definitely can be very, very strong. As the only way to really dampen the effectiveness of these abilities is to drop a healing power down debuff onto them. Let's look at her attacks here next, and the first one is going to be her low AP finisher style attack. It is a range of 3 with a range height of 2 with a low 121% mod. And this one is going to provide a 25 CT bonus on use on top of that, which will definitely open up potential double turn opportunities, especially since this attack is a move to panel with a range of 3. So the potential is here that, you may not even have to take a move action on your turn to get in range to use this particular attack. And in that case, you'd actually be looking at a 45 CT swing. So really nice skill here for any mode of play, really, but I'd say especially good for manual play when, you can actually line up and use that CT effect at, when you're going to get the most advantage out of it. Now, ability 2 here is a base range of 3. It's going to add in another 2 to that on the area of effect. This one has a range height of 1 on the target square with a +1 on the AoE. This one is a 165 mod, and prior to the damage hitting, this is actually going to buff Perene with a 40 defense penetration, and post damage, it's going to apply a debuff of 40 healing power down. Really nice skill here on this one. The area of effect healing power down is really where it's at to be able to effectively shut down sustained healers, units like Velis or Resnick, when you're actually able to land that debuff on both the healer and the heal E, in that scenario. And that's because you're looking at that point at a total healing power loss of 80. Now, this large diamond AoE pattern is something that we've actually been getting used to seeing on, most of the latest damage dealers that are being released. But, we've never before seen it on a physical strike-based damage dealer like Perene. So, good range, good area of effect here. This is definitely going to be a marquee skill for her, especially when she has that self-buff online that, she's going to be able to strip protect off, multiple units there as well. And I think this is going to be a really nice way to deal with dark teams that are featuring Joker, which, he's actually providing that protect buff to the party there. Now, skill 3 here is a range 3 with the range height of 1. It is again a 165 mod, and prior to the damage being applied, this is actually going to lower the single target resistance of your target by 30%, and this is a guaranteed hit ability. So I'd say this is almost identical to Ziz's Job 25 ability, just a bit less here on the modifier. Another very nice skill here for Perene, with that Imperil coming in prior to the damage, this is going to hit like a truck, and definitely has the potential to delete and completely one-shot quite a few units out there. Now her fourth skill here is another move to panel. It's again with a range 3 and a range height of 1. This one though has a large 200% mod. Prior to the damage hitting, this one is going to dispel Immortal Spirit as well. Now an Immortal Spirit Dispel is another very nice thing to have access to for any unit out there. So many units nowadays are just relying on that to be able to survive in battle, so her being able to remove that, you know, on top of doing this large damage here is very, very strong. Now finally we have Perene's Limit Burst, and you know, here we have a range of 4 with a nice range height of 2. Has the standard 200% Limit Burst mod, and this one is a 3-hit chain attack. Now this one does come with an additional effect, and it's going to grant Perene haste. So pretty nice limit burst here, you know, nothing crazy I would say, but you know, I can definitely see potential here to combo this skill with, you know, some of these CT bonus effects that she has in her main kit and from her TMR. And you know, that is going to be very powerful. It's going to lead opportunities that she may be able to get double turns and, you know, chain up with herself and do big damage in battle. So definitely a nice overall kit here. You know, we have good utility coming in, we have that large AoE, and you know, we even have that large 200% mod and the Imperil in there as well. So definitely a lot to like here so far. All right, let's look at the sub jobs here next. Leading it off, you know, very nice main job sub for Perene. The first skill is a short range area of effect, which is carrying a 25% chance to stun the targets. So this skill is pretty decent. You know, I wish it did have a bit longer range, but it does give her an additional area of effect skill, which, you know, I do like it for that reason. Now, skill 2, I think is going to be another great option for PvE chaining. This one is going to be a range 1 3-hit attack. And it does come in with a pretty nice 165 mod on it. So I think this skill, you know, along with the single target resistance break that we looked at there in the main kit, definitely lines her up to be a pretty nice water guild raid unit, especially if you have passed on Chunak. Now she does get the operative sub job, as we briefly talked about earlier, and if you were playing around with an evade build for this unit, you know, this is definitely going to be the sub job that you're going to want to use. And that's because she is picking up that 25 evade buff that she can use there. Now, in addition to that evade buff, you know, she does have a 25 accuracy debuff that she can put onto the enemy, and that one is coming in with a range of 6. So that is something that I have seen that the AI will use, you know, on Valentine's Eldyra and other operatives. So I think the potential is there, you know, that you can combo both of those things, and she will be very evasive at that point if you've built her for it. Now, just for general use, I do also really like the Shadow Dance ability from Operative. That is a 30% general barrier that she's able to equip, and it does actually give her a very large 25% agility bonus while that barrier is active. So another very nice skill that you could use, you know, even if you were not going for an evade build. And when you think about that 25% agility buff, you know, and sort of comboing that with the haste effect that she can put on and the CT up effects that she has, you know, it's just going to be quite crazy, you know, the speed of this unit when you consider all of those things. Our last sub job here is Pugilist, and you know, as I've said in the past, this is definitely not one of my favorite jobs in the game. It's definitely in wait of a significant rework, so hopefully we'll see something positive there soon for this one. This job is just really limited in its range, you know, many of its attacks are just 1 to 2 in range. Now sadly, she also doesn't have access to what I think is one of the better skills for this job, which is Demon Purger. It has that huge modifier on it that I actually really like. She does pick up Wicked Pummel though, which is a short range area of effect attack, so another option to add in some more AoE for her. In terms of potential job revisions here for Pugilist, I am sort of hoping that maybe they pick up a barrier break. I think that would be something that would sort of round out Perene's kit here very nicely, so we'll have to sort of wait and see, you know, what they add to this job, but I think that would definitely be number 1 on my list. Alright, on to my future considerations section, and first off we're going to be looking at a new vision card that will be released the week after Perene's debut in the game. And this one is going to be another one of those job-based vision cards, and this one is going to be for several of the sword-based classes, including knights and paladins. Now in addition to those, it is going to be effective for fist and mace jobs as well. Now specifically in terms of these job-based vision cards, I do have one note of feedback here for Gumi, and you know, I hope somebody out there is listening to this one. These job-based vision cards is definitely another potential area that I'm seeing that really has the potential to alienate some players as we move forward, because I already see it, you know, after just a few of these cards have been released, it's already a big pain point in sort of tracking who can best leverage and optimize the use of these cards when you're looking at the party view. And I think this is definitely going to be a big headache for team building, you know, especially for less hardcore players who, you know, maybe haven't memorized each and every aspect of the game. So I really hope it's being looked at to address this within the UI to, you know, sort of make this a bit more obvious and less painful, you know, when it comes to team building with these new vision cards. I really love the potential that these new job-based vision cards have and sort of the ability for us to sort of branch out from the mono elemental meta. But, you know, like I said, if something doesn't change in the UI to sort of make it a bit more obvious and less painful when it comes to team building with these, I just really see it as being a big headache out there. So please somebody take that feedback to heart and please start working on something for it. All right, again, so off of the soapbox there, and let's actually start looking at what this card actually is going to bring to the table. And the base stats here, you know, are pretty decent. You know, notably, we do pick up some AP and agility here in the base stats, which I always really like to see, especially on a cost 70 card. The bestowed ability here is pretty good too. You know, always very nice to have area resist there to stack that up with the party ability. The 10% attack here is a bit lackluster, but you know, we'll have to see what they sort of add in here for global when it comes to a limited bestowed ability. Now, the party effect on this card is probably one of the more interesting things about it. It's actually the first vision card that we've seen that is giving a party effect of reaction block percentage. And this one is coming in with a 48% reaction block. That is kind of a strange number to land on, I would say. I don't know why they just didn't go for the full 50%. I'm imagining that since this is a job-based vision card and we do see enhanced party abilities for these ones with a higher number, maybe for a mono elemental version, we might see something like 35% for this party effect instead, or maybe 40%. And that's sort of where they came up with this number. It's really the only thing that I can think of to explain it. It is a pretty interesting effect, so, you know, I don't know if it would be the first one that I would look towards, you know, sort of building up my party, but, you know, maybe something that would be nice in a secondary slot that, you know, you can then stack that maybe with a Trust Stone or maybe with an innate, you know, reaction block percentage like Perene has. Now, on top of the reaction block, we are coming in with a 28 strike attack for the party. Definitely notable because we really haven't had that many vision cards that have had this effect. You know, I really can't think of any UR card that has come in with strike attack in the past. So, and another notable thing about all of these job-based vision cards so far, the vast majority of them have been usable by pretty much all of these strike-based jobs that have been released thus far. So I think once we get to this point, we are definitely going to be seeing a lot of experimentation, you know, people putting together different strike-based units, and, you know, maybe a full-blown strike meta will actually come out of it. You know, we'll just have to kind of see, you know, once we get there. Now, the final effect on the card here is the 25% HP effect for the party. And we've definitely been seeing nice tertiary effects on pretty much all of the job-based vision cards thus far. You know, we've been seeing things like area resist, agility, HP, single target resist, you know, pretty much all of the meta favorites that people really love to use out there. So I'd say that the groundwork, you know, is definitely being laid here for, you know, some very powerful parties, you know, leveraging these job-based cards, you know, right off the bat. Now, as with all of the Warriors of the Crystal thus far, a new weapon will be coming along with Perene, and this one is a new fist weapon. And we really don't have all that many options for fist weapons in the game so far, so definitely cool to see another option here. Now, I am highlighting the crit version here today, and in this case, you would be giving up roughly 37 attack to net back 18 crit value. I do actually think that it is worth it. You know, as we saw in the stats overview, her base crit chance, you know, is just above the UR average, but we did see that her raw dex value, you know, is at an above average level. So I think if you combine those things with maybe a dex card in the party and a crit weapon, you're going to be able to put her in a place where she can very reliably crit. And when you're in a position where you can reliably crit, then, you know, new gearing options are going to open up to you. Things like the Thornlit or her own TMR. That do bring those additional effects, you know, when she does crit. Now, an interesting thing about this weapon on top of that standard 15 strike attack that we see here, and according to WoTV Calc, you know, these passives are actually going to apply to all fist-based jobs except Urel and Snow's unique jobs. And the passives here are going to be 15 crit as well as 50% debuff resistance when you are above 70% HP. So a couple of very nice passives that Perene is picking up here on the weapon, and I would say that it definitely is giving you even more reason to run a healer or a sustainer, you know, behind her in battle. And that's because, you know, this effect here is not tied to any turn value. You know, it's only tied into that 70% HP condition, so as long as she's being topped off in battle, she's going to have that debuff resistance on her at all times. And as we know, in battle, many units out there, they really like to lead off with their limit bursts, many of which do carry very powerful debuffs that come in prior to the damage. So this 50% debuff resistance that she has here, it has the potential to be very, very powerful for her. You can stack that even with some trust stones and really put her in a position where she's going to be able to block those debuffs entirely. So, I do actually like this here quite a bit. All right, flashing over to our 2022 timeline here next. And here in Global, we've just been barraged recently with a ton of units. We just had our 2.5-year anniversary. We went into Halloween and into Chunak. And now we've just gotten Alaya here in Global this week. So in terms of Perene, the current timetable that we're looking at is going to be about 3 months from the release of this video. And that's going to put us somewhere, in January of 2023. There is the potential there that could be pushed into early February as well. We'll just have to see how Gumi decides to deal with all the limited releases that are sort of coming in prior to that point. Now, Chunak and his Vision card are really the only water releases of relevance that we're aware of, within this 4-month span. Now, Chunak and his Vision cards, are really the only water releases of relevance, during this 4-month span. As I said, his banner just ended recently, so I actually think a lot of players actually skipped out on him, unless you were heavily invested into PvE and sort of chaining game there. Now, in terms of water's elemental wheel adjacencies with lightning and fire, for the lightning elements, of course, we've actually have had a couple of new units released here on Global recently in the 2.5-year anniversary. But we are actually looking at an upcoming release of Summer Helena as well, and I do expect her to be released as a general permanent pool unit, as they have done with the Valentine's units there in the past. Now for the fire element, Sorrow and his Vision card will actually be a significant boon for that element. So I think at a minimum, Perene should be very useful at dealing with any fire evade parties out there with her guaranteed hit. So that is what the current slate is looking like here, guys, for the next few months. Of course, these holiday events, and collaborations are looming pretty large. Remember that at Christmas, we do have the fan-voted Shadow Links that will be coming in as well. And like all other fan-voted units, she would actually be coming in as another 100 cost unit as well. So there's definitely a lot of potential for some meta shakeups, with these various releases that we're going to be looking at here over the next few months. All right, guys, so here is a mock build that I put together for Perene. And I had two thoughts here with this build. I wanted to get away a little bit from the mono elements party, and I actually wanted to leverage a couple of these new job-based Vision cards and sort of see how that might work out. So the idea here with this one is that this would maybe be sort of a Guild War trap sort of defense. And in slot 1, I'm going to have Snow, and I'll do that to maybe try and bait some fire attackers out there. I think that we are going to be seeing more of those, once Sorrow is released in the game. And to sort of counteract that, I am going to be using the water units here behind that, and that's going to be Perene, and I'm going to have Aerith in there as well. And I think that it actually does work out as a pretty nice combination. Not only can we leverage the power of some of the new job-based Vision cards, but we can also leverage the power of the Dark Odin card as well and sort of pick up the multi-element effects there. In terms of the support unit there in Aerith, honestly, I was just really sick of throwing Velis into almost all of my builds. So this is just to kind of show a little bit different look there as well. But I do actually think it's going to work pretty well for our purposes here today and sort of leverage the power of having that elemental advantage there over the potential fire attackers coming at us. So looking at the equipment in the build here, we are using that new fist weapon that we looked at just a moment ago. Now in the armor slots, I am using a new piece that we're going to be getting from a raid in the near future. And I do actually like this on Perene for two reasons. This will actually allow her to get to a 100 defense penetration status, along with her self buff. But I also do like the 25% HP bonus that it is picking up in this case. And I have actually made a conscious effort here in the build to really amplify her hit points and sort of get that up to a significant level. And that's because she does have those two conditional effects, based on her HP value. That is going to be the debuff resistance that's coming in on the fist, as well as the attack bonus that she's getting from her self buff. So having that additional 25% HP bonus, on this armor piece, that's going to give her a little bit more headroom to sort of stay above that value, early on in the fight. Another nice option there for the armor slot, could be that Thornlet that we were talking about a moment ago as well. Now for the TMR, I am using Summer Kill Phase TMR. This one is definitely a favorite of mine for the combination of that agility and spirits. And I definitely do like the effect on it as well if you do have time to use it in battle. Perene, though, like most modern attackers, she does have 2 very nice self buffs that she will want to get online. So I'd say this one is definitely more of a stat stick. And that is something that we've been seeing as a more general direction for most of the new units in the game. Now for the Esper here on Perene, I am using Odin for the combination of the high agility and the Man-Eater. You could actually opt for something like Siren on there as well for the water attack and even get her some more slash resist. And using something like Siren, it's actually going to make it very easier for her to get to a null slash resistance. Now, it's sort of questionable, how much value that actually holds, with all of the slash penetration in the game. But, in certain matchups, it actually could be very, very powerful. While we're on the topic of Espers, if you're really trying to build up your pierce resistance, you could opt for something like Leviathan. And, along with her base pierce resistance, that is going to get her up to a very strong level there as well. Now for the vision cards, I am highlighting that new job-based vision card there in her main slot. And that's going to really amplify the hit points for both her and Snow. I have paired that along with the Clairvoyant Astrologer card there for the attack and the acquired AP. And this is going to have her at well over 100% acquired AP. So that, along with the AP reduction that she has in her self buff, that is going to be very, very nice for her AP sustain. Now for the party vision cards on Snow, I have Dark Odin for the single target resistance and 50% attack. Now in Snow's subslot, I do have another job-based vision card. This is one that we're going to be seeing shortly after Urel's release. And this one is going to give the party some physical Man-Eater as well as some missile resistance. Now on Aerith, I'm going to have my Winter Holiday Party for Area Resist, as well as Black Rose of the Battlefield for that 8% agility. And when I'm trying to enable multi-element teams, I would say, this is probably my favorite combination that I use on pretty much any support unit for that purpose. Now moving down into the Trust Stones, and again, I am playing around with the idea of going a bit anti-fire here with this build. And Slash and Missile are 2 damage types that particular element is pretty good with. Now adding to those, I have my defensive staples here with HP and luck, and then the debuff resistances there that are going to actually stack very nicely with that glove weapon. Now I have tied all of these defensive effects into an HP set for some additional HP and elemental resistance, but I think a spirit or defense set could actually be pretty nice here as well, and actually could be a good way to get some additional healing power here for Perene. Now on the right side, my first stone is going to be sort of a standard utility stone that I use for a lot of units, and that's going to be acquired AP and dexterity. Now dexterity actually doesn't factor into Perene's damage formula in terms of her attacks. Those are all purely based on her attack value. But we are going for more of a crit focused build here, and dexterity is very nice for that purpose. Now adding to those, I have some attack, water attack, crit damage up, and reaction block. And this will actually have Perene sitting at an 88% chance to ignore counters entirely. Now personally, I think that reaction block is a pretty slept on and undervalued stat in War of the Visions. The power of counter abilities has really taken a notable step forward over the past year of the game. We've seen quite a few very powerful preemptive counters being added in. And those preemptive counters, they do carry with them the potential to completely swing, the tide of the battle. And that's not even saying anything about any of the defensive-based counters, things like Reflex or, even things like Swords Guard or Paladin's Guard. So I think Perene, being able to completely ignore those, without having to first seal counters with a specific ability, I think is actually, pretty powerful for her. So what is my verdict here today on Perene? I think she has a nice combo of bulk and sustain from that auto heal back ability, and she's bringing in that potent strike damage, with that large diamond AoE on top of it. And I think that is especially dangerous because it's not really all that difficult to get Perene into a position where she is largely ignoring the target's defense. And as we've come to see, the majority of units out there do carry an innate weakness to that strike damage as well. And she does have all of these things, with very nice utility that is baked into her skills, including that Immortal Spirit and Protect removal. She has very nice flexibility there as well with all of the different passive abilities that she has, and she can be built well for many different scenarios. She is bringing a substantial double turn opportunity as well for both manual and autoplay, with a combination of self-haste and CT mechanics from her skills and TMR. And there is also potentially more to look forward to with this unit, if Pugilist were to see some interesting upgrades here in the short future. Now, on the other hand, while magic attacks, aren't exactly a weakness for her, it's definitely not a strength of hers either with the lack of magic resistance and the lack of innate spirit. So she is going to be forced to endure those attacks, largely on her HP bulk alone. And while her auto heal back ability is very nice and certainly will help her sustain in battle, she is definitely lacking when it comes to other meta survival tools, things like Reflex, Immortal Spirit, or Re-Raise, or even Protect and Shell. To add to those caveats, her accuracy is also very much middle of the pack, with her guaranteed hit ability, just being single target based. So I think that does represent an area where she could potentially be exposed if she hasn't been built in a way to increase her accuracy. Every unit has their shortcomings though, and in the grand scheme of things, I'd say these ones are fairly minor nitpicks. This is overall a very strong unit, and this is instantly going to become one of Water's best attackers right next to Astrius. And I'd say that she will become a formidable duo alongside him, or with other fist-based units, utilizing the power of those new job-based vision cards. So there it is, guys. Another Warrior the Crystal is in the books, with Water actually becoming the first element to have access to 2 of them. Earth is actually the next element that will be getting a Warrior the Crystal. Rurugia was actually just released on the Japanese side, so we will be actually looking at him in my next episode of this series. Getting back to Perene though, strike damage is actually very difficult to defend against, as we sort of talked a little bit about earlier. So I think because of that alone, she is going to be a very strong attacker. At the same time though, lightning is very strong, especially when we're talking about magical based damage. So we definitely have ways we'll be able to keep this unit in check. She definitely could be a thorn in the side of many other elements out there though. I do really like the theme of her sort of increasing her speed, increasing her CT, and I really like the potential there that you could come up with and sort of combo those with other CT based mechanics in the game. What about you guys out there? Is Perene going to be an instant pull for you, or are you actually waiting for the new Dark Warrior the Crystal? I think personally that's the one that I am most excited about seeing. If you enjoyed the video today, hit that like button. It really helps me out with the YouTube algorithm. And if you like what I'm doing here on the channel, hit that subscribe button if you want to see more. And that's really all that I have to say for today. So as always, stay safe out there, and I'll see you guys in the next one.